This conference will now be
Yeah, I
recorded.
know.
Okay. And would anybody like to make the motion to approve the minutes?
Make the motion to approve.
Seconded.
Okay. So the motion, was that Dr. Heiss who made it?
Yes.
Seconded by Dr. Sneisser. Is there anybody that has any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I will take that as they are approved. So we will move on to the DOH enforcement list. Debbie?
Okay, DOH enforcements. First one is dated February 2nd, and it is assessed a civil penalty of $25,000. Of that, $12,500 is suspended pending completion of a 2-year period of improved performance effective 1/22/21. Engage a consultant from the New York City REMSCO to assist the agency with Part 800 and Article 30 compliance. Submit a plan of correction within 30 days of 1/22/21. Submit a DOH 1811 within 30 days of the plan of correction. Vehicle fleet is limited to the number in service as of 8/26/19. Upon completion with the plan of correction and improved inspections for 6 months, the department will accept certifications for additional vehicles. For violations of Article 30, Section 3012(1)B and 10 NYCRR Part 800, 800.21, 800.3, 800.24, 800.23. Agency name, Citywide Mobile Response Corp. in the Bronx, New York. Also dated February 2nd. Suspended for 1 year effective 1/19/21. The suspension is stayed pending no further violations for a period of 3 years. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of 10 NYCRR Part 800.23A and Public Health Law Article 3012(1)B. South Farmington Fire Department in South Farmington, New York. February 23rd, surrendered effective 2/17/21 for violations Part 800.16A7, Andre Volick in Brooklyn, New York. Dated March 30th, suspended for 1 year effective 3/23/31. The suspension is stayed. Placed on probation for 3 years effective 3/23/21. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violation of 800.15(3) and 800.16A13, Benjamin Tesmer in Hamburg, New York. That is all of them.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding the DOH enforcement list? Hearing none, all the correspondence that we've received will be covered under other business, with the exception of we are receiving notification for anybody who has applied for a community paramedic vaccine program. And we have 2 of them in the North Country so far that I have received notices on. One in St. Lawrence County, Governor Rescue, and one in Jefferson County, South Jefferson. So those are the community vaccine programs. Excuse me, community paramedicine vaccine programs. Get my terminology right. So state EMS meetings, there has not been one. Mark, do you have anything other to report?
No, the next meetings are scheduled for May 26th, 5th and 6th, I believe. They will be virtual again. And yeah, they're scheduled for the 25th and 26th. CMAC and SEMSCO will be on the 26th, and the subcommittee meetings will be on the 25th. And again, they'll be virtual. Jonathan will be sending out the links at the appropriate time.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't received any of the information yet on those. All right. Any questions for Mark regarding state EMS meetings? Hearing none, we will move on to the RSI testing status, which I am again going to turn over to Mark. I did send out some information for him today, but I will share my screen and bring that policy up. And Mark, you can take it from there.
Last week we started the psychomotor testing portion of the RSI program in Watertown. With Dr. Delaney's approval, the written exam is going to be available online for a lot of different reasons, including the COVID rules and everything else. In a conversation in the middle of last week with Dr. Delaney, myself, and Debbie, we were discussing some of this, and it brought about some proposed changes. The first question is video laryngoscopes. Every agency, there's no requirement of a specific brand, so every agency has their own video laryngoscope device. To expect them to bring it down, take it off a vehicle, etc., is impossible for the testing, and it's something that should be reviewed on a regular basis. One of the things I'd like to put to the physicians is amending the policy and adding, it's in red, some form of skills verification on the agency-specific video laryngoscope on a quarterly basis. And this is not an RSI testing scenario. This is solely an intubation scenario with the intent of basically break out the video laryngoscope, use it, remain familiar with it, and intubate a mannequin with the device. It is not an RSI testing. There would not have to be somebody there who's RSI credentialed as much as whoever the training officer is for the agency that could manage this. It should be relatively easily managed from a workload standpoint. And the only other verbiage change in the policy is some clarification that the psychomotor testing needs to be done by the regional medical director or their designee. And that also, I believe, is in red.
I didn't see that.
Somewhere in there.
I didn't see that in red, but when I hit the markup pane, it has the markups from, because we never accepted them afterwards, from back in 2016.
I believe it was under provider credentialing or provider testing. And that is just to clarify who can do the initial testing, and it would be the regional medical director or their designee at this point, unless you guys want to change that completely.
Is this where, when we're talking about this policy and we go too much further, do we want to talk about the license agreement with First Airway so that we know what we want to do with that for the REMSCO meeting? Do you have it called out in there that we're using that?
It references some form of advanced level or supplemental difficult airway training. It does not need to be the difficult airway class through First Airway. It does reference that, you know, the region will provide those classes on an as needed basis. You know, I mean, there is, an agency that had approached me. You know, they want to incorporate some alternative training, and you know, I said, like, get me some objectives, get me an outline, get me some material, and I will be more than happy to take a look at it and forward it along to REMAC and Dr. Delaney and get their approval on it. The difficult airway class is not, you know, by any means the only class that would meet that need. It is just the one that's, at least at this point, was readily available to the region at the time.
Oh, it's a lot of money, and I don't want to spend this money and try to hit the commitments if we're going to allow people to use other things. So that's why I think we need to discuss what we want to do with that and what the docs want to do with that, because you know, we have to hit some milestones that we haven't done so far, and it's a lot of money, and we set people away to get that. So I think we need to probably have that discussion now, because again, I don't want to spend that and then we allow people to use something else. So
Well, I certainly believe that COVID played a role in us not meeting the milestones. I also believe that the milestones that the difficult airway program require are much greater than the number of folks that we have wanting the course or the availability to do the course.
so they did lower the number. So it used to say train a minimum of 40 per year. And now they have lowered it to 25. And they took out a minimum of 50 individuals per year. In the other portion, they've removed that altogether. So they're basically saying that we need to train a minimum of 25 individuals per year in the difficult airway course. And they've taken out the minimum for the essentials of advanced airway management or fundamentals of airway management. They've taken out the requirements, the minimum for that.
But well, if we taught the other ones, would that go towards the minimum of the difficult airway course?
It just says train a minimum of 25 individuals per year in the difficult airway course. And then it lists all those. So I would say yes. Then it lists all three of them after that. So yes. Total amount of 25.
Question for you guys, and we're going through this down in the southern tier as well. What would you anticipate first year total number of RSI folks you would have in the region, the 3-county region? What would be that total number based on what you know now?
Mark, we put some through the testing already, and you know, we've already held courses for the initial training. And we had providers that weren't necessarily going for RSI, but they took the course because they liked it, you know, for the additional education, and it really received rave reviews. Mark, what's our numbers for who you put through testing already? It's not a large number.
We have 2 that have tested, and I've got a total of 5 provider applications. I'm sorry, 6 provider applications total. The testing notice was a little bit short for people to be able to make arrangements for in some circumstances. But
even the ones we tested before, there weren't that many.
Correct. You know, as far as the first year, a lot of it is dependent on which agencies want to pull the trigger on it. I mean, I've on and off heard interest from other agencies and have not yet seen applications from other ones. So
Yeah.
I do know Guilfoyle is working on a plan, or working on some stuff. And, you know, depending on what numbers they put forward, that would be, you know, have a huge influence on the total number that would be available.
And we just got video laryngoscopes at town, so there may be another, I don't know. They're going to move forward with RSI here in a little bit now that we have all the necessary equipment. So there may be another 7 to 10 out of town.
So what, because in the southern tier, they're running into the same issues. And what I think they're beginning to see it build, you know what I'm trying to say, but it's the momentum of building it has been very slow because of COVID and everything else that's going on. And that's what I would offer, that sometimes it's, you know, but again, there's a lot of costs associated with it, but this program is the gold standard. And I will also offer that in a malpractice setting, having national certification courses behind these people is the attorneys are very happy to see that. Just a thought. And that was kind of the things down in the southern tier they were weighing and looking at it.
I think one of the challenges really has been, you know, we sent multiple people to get credentials as instructors, but we've lost at least one of those. So it's really a small group that can do it, and it is a small group of extremely busy people. So I guess it's the group that truly has to decide whether they have the time to make the commitment to this, or if we do something different. But one thing I would say for the program is we probably, if somebody had spare time to help organize the classes, that would be helpful, I think, to both Paul and I. And I don't want to speak for Paul. He was on. Is he still there? I can't see everybody.
And we had this conversation when we chose that group. We recognized that and everybody committed to it. And that's why I'm asking, because we need to pay another $1,200 to get you folks re-credentialed to do this. And, you know, I have no problem spending the money, but and I think I have somebody that may be interested in setting the classes up for you and help you with that. It's going to be 8 hours worth of Zoom to get you re-credentialed. And then you'll host a class via Zoom. Well, actually, that's what you're going to do, is you're going to host a class via Zoom with them on, and they will re-credential you at that point. So
I think that the answer has to come from each one of the instructors, as if they're going to be able to commit that kind of time to move forward.
I also think it comes into play on this policy and what we're going to let people do and not do. I don't, you know, people putting their own policy together, how comfortable are the docs with allowing them to do that and not using a nationally credentialed program? That's, you know, I think the docs have got to weigh in on this, how comfortable they are with that.
It's Mark Tuttle. I agree that we definitely can't, in my personal opinion, I don't think we should allow just anyone that puts together a couple of pages on an airway class. But there are definitely, well, the difficult airway class is, I would agree with John, it's definitely the gold standard. There are at least a half a dozen reliable, good, nationally accepted, advanced and difficult airway courses out there that certainly could be endorsed and doesn't have to be exclusive to just the one. I just think that we should be careful to look at those courses and credential ones that are accepted kind of universally across the critical care spectrum.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else have any comments on that? So Dr. Maynard, you've been involved a lot within the RSI. How do you feel about that? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Well, so any alternative airway courses that we would look at would have to be approved, I think, by the REMAC level. If somebody wants to use something other than the Ron Wall's advanced airway course, I think we need to entertain that, but I think we need to see the curriculum and see what it is that they're going to put forth. Because I agree with Mark. I don't think somebody who can just put 3 PowerPoint slides together and says, yep, we're going to use this as our internal airway training is appropriate.
so I guess for me, without hearing from the other instructors, I think it's hard to, I can say as one of the instructors that, I'm willing to commit the time and make sure this happens. But if the other instructors don't have the time, it's not a one-person job.
And I'm going to assume, I know myself and I'm sure Paul and Justin would agree that we would attempt to make every effort to meet the time requirements. And to add to Mark and Dr. Maynard's comment, I do believe it's in the policy statement that any course outside of the difficult airway course that the region offers would have to be approved by this body.
So I guess, so the first thing is, it sounds like we should maybe try and move ahead and maybe put a little more focus as a group. And Debbie, if you have a resource for that to help with the scheduling and making sure these happen, would be great. But secondly, the initial item up for discussion would be, do we want to approve the requirement for, was it quarterly? Sorry, I'm scrolling and making you guys dizzy because I've lost what we started.
It was quarterly agency level video laryngoscope skills assessment. And the other wording change was under initial credentialing number 8, and it just changed it to the regional medical director or their designee to do the initial testing.
Sorry, I can't find where we were, so. All right. So Paul is on, he's having trouble with his audio. He stated he's good for doing a course, but getting students was problematic secondary to cost. But again, we can hopefully work through that. So I would entertain a motion for the approval of the quarterly video laryngoscope skills and the wording change for ensuring that the regional folks are involved with the skills. Does anybody want to make a motion regarding those changes?
I'll make a motion.
So we have a motion on the floor by Matt to to do the quarterly video laryngoscope skills, as well as the change for the skills credentialing needs to have regional involvement. Is there a second to that? By one of the physicians?
I'll second
Dr.
that.
I second that.
All right. Dr. Heiss's name lit up that I saw. I'm not sure who else was talking, so Dr. Heiss, will give that to you. Is there any further discussion on this?
I would just like to thank Mark and the team for following through with this and making it happen. I know everybody, as we've said, has a full schedule, but Mark, you really kind of took this by the horns and have tried to keep it moving forward. And thank you so much for your efforts on that.
So if there's anybody opposed to this? If not, the motion will pass. Hearing nobody opposing, motion passes. All right. So the next item, Mark, do you have anything else to add on the RSI, or is there any other questions?
I have nothing else to add unless anybody has any questions for me.
All right. Hearing none. So under other old business were the protocols. So the protocols that we discussed at the last meeting that were approved at the state level, I have heard nothing about them being approved at the commissioners level or from the collaborative group as far as, being completed or approved or anything. So
I had somebody that did the webinar on nosebleeds and using the Afrin, and they were told that upon completion of that, they were set to go. And I told them I didn't think it had all been approved yet, but that's what they were told when they did that webinar.
there's been no education, there's been no rollout.
And I'm not aware the commissioner's office has approved those yet as well, unless you've heard anything, Ann. I've not.
I have not. So, and I have asked a couple of times. It's a little farther down. I'll talk about the TXA because that had to, or I'll just kind of throw it in now. I did replied to the group, the TXA concerns that were discussed at our last meeting. I didn't get any response from that other than one of the other physicians from Mountain Lake saying, thank you. I was going to email about that. But there's been no traffic on the collaborative protocol group discussion and nothing from the state. So I guess I'll continue to reach out and find out where we are with those. But as far as I know, nothing is approved.
And offline, you and I could talk about that. I might have a way to get us a little movement on that issue.
Okay. All right. So the next was the BLS 12 lead, and I'm not sure that needed to be left on there. We are just waiting for agency applications, and I do not believe we have received any. I know of a couple agencies that are currently thinking about it. So Debbie, do you have anything further on the difficult airway?
No, I have nothing more on the difficult airway. We'll take it to the REMSCO and discuss it there, I guess.
Okay. So the FAST ED and the TXA stuff I will cover in my program agency report. So I'll do the membership recommendations. So as we discussed at the last meeting, we had people that were coming up for their dates were expiring. They all received letters so that they were all aware of that. Hang on a second, I'm going to share my screen again. So we put out a notice for applications. The process under the new bylaws is that the chairs appoint them. I was actually very excited that we're going to be bringing some new blood in, because this was, and please don't take that negatively, just, rotating people around on the REMAC, because with the physicians being the only voting member, we would encourage everybody to remain and participate. But it will also help us to grow our young, if you will. So in Jefferson County, we'll be putting forth to the REMSCO that Brian Draper from Carthage Fire is a basic EMT, which will replace Bobby Simpson, but we hope Bobby will stay and participate in the meetings. Lewis County would be Robert Bowman to replace Matt Yell, and Matt was actually in a BLS spot. So that he will be a great addition as a BLS provider, and we hope that Matt stays on to participate. And there were 2 openings in St. Lawrence County. We did not get an application for a new BLS provider, so I would recommend that Jen Hines be extended for another term. But we did receive an application from Justin Bahatla, who is a paramedic, works in the Syracuse region as well as in our region. And the recommendation was for him to replace Mark Devers, with the caveat that Mark Devers stay on and chair the RSI committee, which he agreed to. And secondly to that, I don't know why we have an expiration date on the county representatives. I'm thinking that should be removed, because that's whoever sits in that county office representing EMS. Paul is already on the committee for Jefferson County. Neil Rivenberg from the 911 Center applied to be on the REMSCO, and we put him on there, but I'm not sure. We had a discussion on whether the county representative for REMAC should come out of Paul's office, and potentially be Chris, because of, or if it should be somebody from the 911 office. What are people's thoughts on that? I should say from emergency management. Any thoughts on that? All right, we'll discuss it with the chairs and the executive committee, and we'll make the decision if there's no thoughts on that. Of course, Paul wasn't here to add his thought to that. Looks like he got booted out. All right, is there any questions on the recommendations that will be set forth? Oh, Paul's still here. Apparently doesn't have any audio though. All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next. Spring fling. Debbie, do you have anything for that? Debbie, you're on mute if you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So Spring Fling has been changed to a fall frolic, whatever you want to call it. I have booked Edgewood from 10/21 to 10/24. I've had conversations with Janine. She's really hopeful that we can get together by then. She said she has seen a dramatic increase in food prices and is concerned how that might impact us and that we may not be able to do some of the meals like what we've done in the past. And she just wanted to make me aware of that. So I had a list of ideas for the conference. We talked about not doing lectures, but having it be a hands-on type opportunity. So these were the things that I had on the list. A MCI drill, doing some ICS training, CPR, coaching the emergency vehicle operator. I thought we could get some deer hearts and do some heart dissections. We could do 12 lead training. We could do secondary assessments. We could do the TXA, MCI, and start triage, possibly auto extrication, and something with service dogs. So I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts on whether that would work. Janine said that she will do whatever to help support us and give us the space that we need to do this. Obviously, she recognizes that it's really dependent on what the state does and says on things as far as social distancing and numbers and everything, but she's eager to get people back up there and missed having us there last year and really hopes that we can make a go of it this year.
All right, well, if we are going, a decision will have to be made probably to tonight's REMSCO meeting if they're going to go ahead and move forward with that, because time is short for planning. So one of the concerns that had been discussed previously was with doing it the last weekend in April, which we have done for a long, long time. And Mountain Lakes had moved their conference to May. I did discuss with the executive director of Mountain Lakes the impact that having the conference in early May will potentially have on our last weekend in April conference. And he said that, you know, because of COVID and all the stuff and their routine place not being available to have the conference, the date early in May, which they currently have for IAC, was the only one available, but he will keep that in mind moving forward. So I just wanted to share that. Any other comments on spring fling? All right. So let me pull up my presentation and share my screen again, and I will go through the program agency report. Oops, I just lost my files. I have to tell you, it is very difficult to go from Zoom to GoToMeeting and back and forth. I forget where the controls are. All right. Can you guys see my screen? How come it's not showing? And oh, I have to share my other screen. I apologize. Otherwise, it won't show in full screen view. All right. I can't believe I'm still having all these difficulties this far into virtual meetings. All right, so the program agency report. Now it won't move. There we go. So as I said, I took the concerns over TXA to the RTAC meeting that was held March 19th. Here are kind of my notes from the meeting. So I'll chat about the TXA first, which is the last bullet. And they really didn't have a decision, yay or nay, against it. They were more in favor of seeing blood come to fruition in New York, but we all know the story behind that. But they remained undecided on TXA and will be drafting a formal letter for the regions regarding that. So we should see some correspondence regarding that. So as I said, the stroke advisory committee, the regional one, was canceled due to their conference. The trauma advisory committee was March 19th. The next one will be June 11th. They continue to be virtual. They reviewed, or they talked about the ACS standards for trauma centers being released, and that they are doing some virtual on-site visits as well, so that verifications are moving forward. They discussed telemedicine sites at Camp Potsdam Hospital, Governor, River, and Samaritan are live for trauma. And they have a Trauma Reach conference, which is April 14th and 15th. We had previously sent the announcement out to EMS agencies. Samaritan reported they'll be having their on-site ACS review for level 3 trauma center designation soon. And that SUNY Upstate is working with ImageTrend to be able to send back the trauma feedback through Hospital Hub, which is a ECR program that is part of our regional bridge, and that's how our charts get to the hospitals. They did just recently send out information to agency CQI coordinators. One of the challenges we've had with that is agencies don't always update us with who's doing their CQI as people change, or the list changes and we don't get that update to the trauma center because I'm never sure when they're going to send it out. Hence the reason why they're trying to work towards another program, but they did send out emails verifying the coordinators and the agency. And again, that is CQI feedback for trauma patients that were taken to SUNY Upstate via EMS. Any questions on RSTAC or RTAC? All right. Why is this being so crazy? So on the stroke front, the stroke video I talked about last time and the initiative that we had going with SUNY Upstate Central New York the deadline was March 31st. We had monies available for a stipend for the first 120 agencies who had at least 50% of their providers complete. And we only received 37 rosters, 11 of which were from the North Country. So we are in discussions now. We are probably going to extend that and resend that out again. But we've had 155 North Country providers take the test with 658 providers overall. So I don't know if it's a matter of getting the paperwork to us or hitting the target of 50% of the providers within their agencies, but we will further work to promote that. We had talked a little bit about increasing the stipend, but the problem is if anybody's dealt with grants, there's a lot more to that than just saying that the stipend can be increased. So we'll be meeting with Central New York and Upstate to discuss those. Oh, this is terrible today. I don't know if it's my computer or what here. All right, so Samaritan is a primary stroke center. We have been sending out feedback to the EMS agencies. That gives you a list for the feedback that has gone out to which agencies who have brought stroke patients in. Today I sent February and March's, so if your name's on the list and you haven't seen it, it's in your email somewhere. If not, give me a call. After we released the regional stroke policy, after the last meeting, we received some feedback. And I just kind of in blue is the feedback that I received. And their concern was, you know, the last couple of sentences being the same, and wanted to know if this makes it look like there's a difference, but in both cases, you want them to consider that. And Dr. Cartier would put the policy statement together, provided the answer to that, and I wanted to share it tonight so that we made sure everybody was on board and see if there was any discussion with that. But should and may are different levels of recommendation. Should would indicate a recommendation for something but not a requirement. May means providers can do it if they think it's in the patient's best interest, but it's not recommended for or against by the policy. So again, med control, they can always use, but it was written that way intentionally so providers had multiple options without having to contact med control, which makes sense. But I thought it was good to put the clarification out there. Does anybody else have any comments on that? Thoughts on that? Okay, so I will provide that information back to the person who sent it to me. So we've done some agency renewals. They're listed there. Again, just a reminder for any agencies that are on that everything is being done electronically now. And we do have the forms if somebody has not received them. And we are still sending out reminders for our agencies. For the CC and paramedic agencies with narcotics, we're getting the certification, their CON renewal, and then the narcotic renewals are coming later. And they should be sent to the Syracuse office when they send in their renewals electronically.
Also,
So
can I
the-
add to that, Ann, real quick?
Yeah.
To make sure you send us your 5136s, your EPCR paperwork, even if there's no changes to it, the state still wants us to upload any new forms for that.
Mhm. So I guess I do have a question for John. And I think I asked this once before and I forgot what the question was or what the answer was. So I know that when I sent the recertification for one of our departments up here, I just got a copy of the 5136 form we had. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine, Ann. That works. The key is, I believe the regional program agency is supposed to be approving and making sure they're complying, aka you're getting the data and you're getting access to, you know, quality assurance and all that stuff. Yeah.
John, can you go? There we go. Whew, I don't know what happened, but John just started to echo. So again, instead of filling the new form out, we have these all on file for the agencies. If they don't have their copy of the original one they submitted, and again, that should work as long as there has not been a change. Okay? Anytime a agency wants to change a vendor for their EPCR, a new 5136 form has got to be completed because of the data mapping. All right. Why is this, every time I click one, it seems to want to jump two. So
Say,
two,
Ann,
yes.
oh, this is just Paul. I was just checking to see if I finally got in.
Oh, there you are, Paul. You are in. So two medical director changes. All the paperwork has been filed with our office. We've given them provisional approval. Tri-Town Rescue to Dr. Coates and Ogdensburg Fire Department to Dr. Howland. Any discussion regarding those two medical director changes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Sneisser, a second by,
Second,
I didn't catch who said that.
Dr. Cartier.
Dr. Cartier. Is there anybody who's opposed to those changes? Speak now, otherwise we'll consider everybody in favor of it. Okay, motion approved. I figured that's easier than doing the roll call for everybody. Quicker. So public access defibrillation, we received a new one from the Jefferson County Development Corp and an updated one from Morristown Central School. BLS adjuncts, the only one that we have are the updates for the two medical director changes, and Clarkson University first responders submitted theirs. They are currently awaiting their Wadsworth CLIA waivers, so I would entertain a motion to approve them for BLS blood glucometry pending receipt of their Wadsworth lab license. Is anybody?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, is that Dr. Gray?
It is.
So a motion by Maya, seconded by
Dr. Cartier.
Dr. Cartier. Anybody opposed to that? Hearing none, moving forward. Okay, so here is what we've spent a significant amount of our time here at the program agency on is been EPCR and data. So the exciting part about this is once Seaway Valley and Wellesley Island go live, which will be this month, I believe, we will be 100% electronic for all of our transporting agencies and ALSFRs, meaning that this REMAC set a goal, was it 2 or 3 years ago, and we are meeting it because this was the goal, April of 2021. We did have a little help, a little push from the state behind that, but I think the exciting part is as a region, you know, we had almost everybody there already before this became a priority at the state level. So kudos to everybody's hard work on that and for all the agencies. So those are the ones that are, we have some that have gone live since our last meeting and we have some that are going. So I apologize for the size of the font on this, but the new thing is the state is now offering a free platform for ALS and ALS first response and transport agencies. And they're also offering a free platform for BLSFRs. Now, in order for BLSFRs to stay in the CME renewal program, they need to be up and running with BLS, or excuse me, with EPCR by the end of the year. So this kind of gives you a list. We have some that are on EPCR already, and we have some that we've transitioned to EPCR over the last month or so. We have some that have made their decision on what they're going to do. And on the next slide, this kind of just gives you a summary. So out of our DLSFRs, there are 34 of them. 11 of them is all that we have that are actually in the CNE program. The number of DLSFR agencies that have submitted applications are 9, 5 of which are in the CME program. Some are considering joining the CME program, I do believe. And so we have 6 that are in the CME program, which we will prioritize to reach out to. And then there are 19 others that are not in the New York State CME program. So they, at this point of the game, they do not have to be electronic. But I do know that there has been discussion on multiple calls that they are going to look at rewriting the policy statements. And I'm not sure if that requirement for electronic documentation will come down in other forms. John may have more insight on that. But that's where we are with the EPCR. And again, we are working diligently because initially the data that goes in on the free platforms that the state have didn't come back to the regional bridge, putting us back where we were at square one of not having all our data in one place. We're working on trying to get that data that goes directly into the state bridge to come back to our regional bridge when providers utilize that DLSFR form. So that is a work in progress. Does anybody have any questions on the whole data initiative or where we're at with this? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. So we did send out a survey to kind of get an idea on where we stood with vaccinations. We've only had a 28% response. And again, we asked we asked about all members in the agency, which included drivers, support personnel. And those are the numbers there. And we have one agency that reported they do not track the vaccination status of their members, but overall, out of the 757 members reported in those 22 agencies, 365 have been vaccinated. Again, the survey hasn't been out very long. We will send a reminder out. So training, we are working with E5 support services and the list of area health education centers to do the virtual leadership conference. Those are the dates it's going to be scheduled. There'll be they'll be shorter and multiple presentations. So there'll be more to come out on that. So EM Resource, the second year contract was approved, so we'll be moving forward this year with it, and Jonathan is working diligently to get folks up and running with that. We did send the survey results to the committee for drug purchasing issues that we received back from that. And I'm not sure if they want to report now or if anybody wants to see the results from that now. It may, course sponsor, I've reported previously that we were working with the DOH for Clarkson University and St. Lawrence County with St. Lawrence with SUNY Canton deciding no longer to be a course sponsor. They have decided to accept the application and it will be going to the REMSCO for endorsement tonight. And again, thank you to Jefferson County for holding us up while working on getting another course sponsor in the county. And as I said before, data integrity has consumed a huge portion of both my time and Jonathan's time. So that was it. Oh, and the EMS memorial will be held September 30th. Any questions for the program agency? Okay. Hearing none, CQI policy statement. So I did send this out with lots of time to review. I did receive one person who sent back edits. And just a reminder for everybody, how come that's the RSI policy statement coming up? There we go. Hold on a second, I gotta get the. All right, screen. Okay, so this was sent out for review. Just to give you a reminder of why we're reviewing this is due to an incident that happened elsewhere. We were advised by the state that the REMAC should not be suspending people. And any time that it is thought a provider needs to be suspended, that those should go through the Department of Health. Okay, basically the rules and regulations really don't give authority for the REMACs to suspend in a nutshell. So I looked at our quality improvement, and based on that, and that all happened pre-COVID, and then we kind of dropped off the face of the earth, and I just brought it back to life. So basically what I did is I looked at the quality improvement policy statement, and I started it off, and the first portion of it is copied and pasted right out of the regulations. And because it came out of that, of health was not in there, so that needs to be added behind department. So the first part talks about the requirements for EMS services and what incidents they need to report. The second part starts at any patient care issue concern should be forwarded to your agency medical director for review and development of remediation / suspension of ALS BLS privileges is deemed appropriate per review, because agency medical directors can. They do have the authority to do that. As you can see, it's crossed off. Anything about the REMAC suspending. The other additions into this policy statement were kind of what the functions are of the Regional Continuous Quality Improvement Committee. And again, it is for us to review if an issue is referred to the committee by a service medical director, which really hasn't changed. The we and the eliminate is just some grammar. So the question came up is, this applies to patient care issues, concerns doing interfacility and 911 operations. And I left that in there because this is geared more towards the service medical director and us forwarding stuff back there. I know that as a REMAC, we don't have the oversight over that, but the service medical directors do, and that's why I left that in there. And again, I think the rest is grammar and the addition of in collaboration. You know, so basically, if the CQI issue comes to us here, it's going to go back through the service medical director, and we will work with that service medical director. And that's the gist of the changes that I made. Any other? Yes.
So looking at the beginning part of that policy statement, that has a lot more to do with reportable incidents as opposed to quality improvement necessarily. I guess I have two questions to that, and certainly open to the group for discussion on this. One, since it's already spelled out in Part 800, is it necessary to have a policy statement covering the same thing that's covered already by the public health law? And two, if we do feel it's necessary to have a policy statement for reportable events that need to be reported to the state, would it be worthwhile, instead of trying to shoehorn it into the QI, the CQI policy statement, as opposed to making a new reportable event policy statement that might, eliminate some of the clutter that's in a CQI policy statement that already has an awful lot of stuff in it?
Any other thoughts? I think I added it in just because some of the other, just as a reminder to the agencies on what needed to be reported directly to the Department of Health. My opinion is we don't need another policy statement, but I am not opposed to removing it. Thoughts out there?
If I could offer some historical perspective on the reportable incident piece versus CQI. Historically, the reportable incidents came out of different other parts of the public health code in New York State, specifically 405 with hospitals and others with nursing homes. And there were certain things that they wanted to have reports on for reportable incidents. And then quality assurance was meant to cover everything else. Well, over the years, what's occurred is there's been a kind of a marrying of the two, because if you have a reportable incident due to actions of omission, commission that occur, the medical director, the agency medical director is going to want to know about these, and they're going to be part of this. I think Ann used this as an example to start the conversation, but this doesn't mean it doesn't end here. And I think that's the spirit of which I took the writing of this. Others may disagree. But again, remember that quality assurance is an education process. It is not a punitive process. And the quality assurance should be looking at things, the trend analysis, when you have a provider that, has a bad call, okay, and they've been to the service for 5 or 10 years and they have one bad call, that doesn't necessarily rate an enforcement action to the Department of Health. It needs to be notified about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, we're going to do enforcement. The cases we go after typically have, as you all know, multiple different things along with them. There's 3, 4, 5 cases all within a year or so that just the standard of care isn't being maintained, or the provider's missing the boat for a variety of reasons. Those are the cases that go to enforcement. So that may or may not help you in delineating whether you want 2 policies or 1 policy. I just offer that as a point of perspective of history.
Thank you, John. And we didn't have that in there before, so hence the reason why I am not opposed to taking it out. We do get an awful lot of questions at our office on whether or not an item is reportable.
And I'll be honest, those things need to come directly to us at the regional office level. That's what the code says. That and I mean, over the years, we've generally figured out what is and isn't. Every once in a while, every 10 phone calls I get, every once in a while I get one that's like, well, I'm not sure. As an example, the crew gets in an auto accident because a deer jumped out in front of them, okay, and someone got hurt. Well, that's an act of God and realistically not a reportable incident per se. We encourage the agency to report it just because then there's transparency with all the folks going, as opposed to someone who fell asleep behind the wheel and the vehicle goes off the road and people get hurt. That is clearly meant the spirit of reportable incident and so forth. So that would definitely be a reportable incident that'll get a review and follow up.
All right, thank you, John. Any other input into this? Okay. So how about we remove the reportable stuff and then we can make a decision. I mean, that stuff is already elsewhere. It does not need to be in here. And then move forward with the other corrections, although I would leave interfacility in there because this is kind of a guide for the service medical directors as well. So what's the pleasure of the REMAC? Do you want to move forward with a motion that removes the reportable incident stuff and we move forward with the grammar corrections that are in the protocol?
Yeah,
Or
Secretary, I'll make a motion to remove the information about reportable incidents and then accept the other changes as indicated.
Okay, I have a motion on the
I'll
floor.
second that motion, and Dr. Howland.
And a second by Dr. Howland. Is there anybody opposed or that has further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll consider that approved. And I am just going to leave my screen sharing. So the other one is the stroke data that I sent out to everybody. And of course, it's not here. All right. Sorry about that. I thought that I had it right there. Jonathan, can you find that and pull that up, the policy statement that we did on that? I thought I had opened it up. I actually have one more to talk about. Jonathan, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I just have my screen separated, so I have to find the right one.
So I told Jonathan today that I feel like I'm forgetting something. I think I just found out what I forgot.
Is that what you wanted?
No, that's the quality improvement. I want the street study.
Okay, hold on.
So one of the things, as John said, is that we are trying to move forward with some proactive QA, QI now that we're getting data. And so I'm gonna make this bigger on a screen. Jonathan has shared his screen. Can you make that bigger, Jonathan, at all?
Yep, hold on.
So with the stroke initiative, with the AHA and the other ones, we pulled some data through 6/1 of 2020 to 12/31 of 2020. As you can see there were the 172 charts that we sorted out and were left after we went through and looked at the integrity of the data. So the initial pull was over 1,000 charts, because we were looking for whether blood glucose was documented, and it was documented in, every set of vital signs it was documented in were recorded. But this gives you an idea that for the most part, a blood glucose is being done whenever there is an altered mental status or a stroke patient to ensure that we're ruling out that it's a hypoglycemic problem or a problem with the sugar. 16 charts did not have a stroke scale recorded of any type. So again, that's still a small percentage. 26 charts indicated a transfer to a landing zone or an air medical provider. And 20 of those 172 charts, the providers use the FAST-ED. As you know, the program agency has to do a study. So we'll be a little late with this based on the fact that I should have started the data at 7.1 instead of 6.1. We're going to pull the same report and bring the same results back to see if more folks are using the FAST-ED after we've done the education again. The bottom of the chart, you can see that Cincinnati, which is, as it should be, is the most used stroke scale. And again, it shows you the different ones there. So scroll down, Jonathan, to the next page. We did have one odd finding. One of them said, what was it, a Massachusetts stroke scale? I had that documented at the bottom.
Yep.
This kind of tells you and gives you an idea. I'm not going to read from what we pulled. But moving forward, this is what I want you to see. When we talk about data integrity, this is how we find out whether our data is any good or not. And we need to now reset our goals to making that, getting good data. So one of the things I noted is that documenting under the incident dispatch, the transfer IFT is not in there. They're documenting, so we can't identify it as an interfacility transport. So that would be an educational thing, but as well as a couple other things. I'll talk about that more in a minute. It's very interesting, and a lot of the providers checked intracranial hemorrhage, non-traumatic, but everything else in the chart told me that it was a trauma call. So that's something for providers to be conscientious about when they're picking their primary impressions. What I'd like to do is develop an EPCR administrator committee to identify ways to make data more consistent between the vendors. With that being said, and I can take this to the REMSCO as well, we know what's available in the image trend system, and as we look at data, we see data that's inconsistent. So to kind of put a regional standard that can be done throughout, irregardless of who the vendor is, but I need representation from folks that use these other vendors and that know the back end of the system and know what's in the system really well. And then again, some of the data weaknesses. So at the point of the game when this was pulled, there does not include charts from 5 transporting agencies and 1 AOSFR. And for some reason, when we pulled the data, it pulled through at least one chart that was for a patient less than 18 years old. And the impressions are varied based on what's available for the providers to pick. So those are some of the data weaknesses when we go to pull data. Any questions? What do I got here? So again, our goal, as I already stated, was to see if there's an increased use of FAST-ED. Any thoughts on this?
And I think the template that you put together here with capturing the data is ideal. And we could have some committees capture data. And I think this is a good template to use, whether we're doing strokes or whatever we want to capture the data on. And like you said, now having all of that data available to us, we're crazy not to pull it. And then I think based on the outcome is where we can put recommendations and some training maybe on our website for different things that we see people are missing. You know, the people that didn't do the blood glucometry, was it because their agency doesn't have blood glucometry approved and we need to try to work with them to get that to happen and things like that. And I just think that we could follow this template and really get some data and increase our education and work with our core sponsors to make sure that we do a heightened education if we're seeing an area we're really laxing.
Absolutely. But I think we really need to, you know, I'm having a few issues with the data integrity right now. And that's why I think having a few more people involved in this would be spectacular. And what I find, and poor Jonathan, I'll ask him to pull me a report because it's not necessarily a user-friendly system to pull data out of, but he's gotten pretty good at it. But after I start reading the report as a clinical provider, I start having questions and have to have him add to it. And I think that's where the value of having other people on this committee, you know, working on this and helping with this data pull will work or will be helpful. So, but we'll pull the results and then be able to do a comparison. And we're going to do this for our report. If the REMAC approves, it's okay to do that. So I will take it as approved unless somebody doesn't approve it or wants to see something different. They can talk now. Okay. So I had one other item of new business, which recently, look at that, my star bright light now that the sun's hit a certain level. I'm just going to turn my camera off, you guys, because that's terrible. So the other discussion that we had was on Versed dosing. Specifically, what dosage to start at if you are using Versed for behavioral emergencies. Sarah, would you like to add any more to that?
We just had, I guess what brought up the conversation is two providers at Samaritan had approached me concerned about two patients that they felt had a not 5 milligrams of Versed been given. They were both intoxicated patients, that these patients perhaps would not need to have been intubated. And we're wondering why 5 is the starting point versus 2.5. And so Ian and I had a conversation regarding that and thought perhaps we should bring that for discussion here with, you know, consideration for giving maybe 2.5 initially and then repeating the dose if necessary. Again, there's no way to absolutely say both of these patients may have needed to be intubated regardless of what dose of medication had been given for their combativeness, but that's where this had come from.
So I will say that I did try to, and again, we just started this conversation late last week, so I didn't have a lot of time on my hands, but we did start to try and pull some reports on what the initial doses were, you know, or how often it was being used. And that's where I got back into and what it's being used for, back into my data integrity issue. We found some duplicated charts, which we'll be going back to the state on, but it takes a long time to review all these charts. So while I did grab some data, I will say that Versed is intermuscularly. So we had 21 milligrams. What was the 2021 data, Jonathan? It was January to April or March 30th?
January till April 2nd, because that's the day we pulled the report.
So we did have, and actually the report I'm looking at right now, 21 total milligrams administered. Or excuse me, a grand total of 49 milligrams administered altogether in that time period. Intramuscularly, they started with 5 milligrams 15 times and 2.5 6 times. But again, then you have to go back and cross-reference them to what they were giving it for. It was been giving intranasal as well a couple times. One at a 2.5 dose, one at a 5 milligram dose. And intravenous administration has been given 13 times at a 2.5 dose and 9 times at a 5 milligram dose. And then it comes up with IV push. So you would have to, again, back to our data integrity, why, so providers documented IV push instead of just IV 3 times at the 5 milligram dose. So it's very interesting once you start to dive into this data. Overall, the winning, I will just kind of give you an idea of the different types of choices that we have and why looking at the data is complicated. Let me get my screen shared here again. Whoops, I just lost it. All right. So here's the quick report. And again, I haven't gone through the integrity, but can you guys see that? Try to make it a little bigger. When you look at this and you pull out of this charting system, so because of the differences in vendors, this is what we're talking about. You have epilepsy unspecified, again, it pulls different. Unspecified convulsions, right? But these are the primary reasons that Versed or ketamine was given since the beginning of the year. That's the primary impression. But just kind of give an idea of what we're up against when we're pulling the data. Thoughts on that? We can, if there's a committee that wants to work on this and potentially doing an advisory, we would welcome that. Any volunteers?
And I'm happy to help out. I'm a believer of I agree with what Sarah said, so I'm happy to work on that. Just let me know with whom.
Okay. Anybody else?
And I don't mind working on that with Dr. Gray and Dr. Delaney if you would like a non-physician member.
No, that would be good.
And I'd be willing to as well.
Okay. Maya, oh, look at that. That is the M crew. Maya, Mark, and Melissa. Okay. I will set up a committee meeting. I'll send out a correspondence and set up a committee meeting. And then that way we can get on and work with the data as well, so we can give you some data, okay? That sound like a plan?
Yes.
All right. Any other new business? All right.
And one quick thing, I just might point out to everybody that it's a requirement under 800.8. It's specifically it's 821K that says that basically services have to maintain immunization records of all their personnel. And obviously in this COVID time, that's something that as an agency medical director, I think you want to have a good handle on who has and hasn't been immunized. So as we kind of work our way through this, and I'll just point out that is an 800 requirement, just a thought.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move. It's Dr. Cartier.
Okay, Doctor.
And
Seconded.
this will be my last REMAC meeting. I'll be moving out of the area before the next one. So just thanks to everybody for your help and guidance. And it's been enjoyable to participate with everybody in this process. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Cartier.
Thank you, sir.
I wish I would known that. We really appreciate everything that you've done and helped us with. I will reach out. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Okay, if there's no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.